All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. This is Jessica from BeMyApp, and here we also have Neeraja from IBM. Glad that you're able to join us for this hands-on IoT webinar. So before we start, I just want to make sure that every one of you have registered for the Bluemix. So if you have not registered, I have the link on this slide that you can open while waiting for the others to come in. So today, just a brief detail, Neeraja will be showing us how to build an IoT app using the Bluemix, NodeRED, and also the simulated sensor. So make sure you have that Bluemix with you. And if you have any question at all, please post your question at the comment section below. And at the end of the presentation, we'll be addressing them and Neeraja will be answering them live. So without further ado, I will switch the screen to Neeraja's screen.
Thanks, Jessica. We weren't actually able to see the screen that you were talking about earlier. So is there any way you could just put that on for a bit?
All right, the Bluemix screen?
Not the Bluemix screen, the one with the link and, your introduction screen.
Yeah, here it is. Can you see it? Oh, I haven't actually shared my screen. I'm so sorry. Here. Can you see it now?
Yep.
All right, that's the link.
I'll wait for a couple of minutes. So, and hi everyone, Neeraja here. So Jessica has put up a link that says register for Bluemix at that particular link. So I'll wait for a couple of minutes for people to join and register, and then we'll start. All right, then let's get started. I'll just share my screen right now. And Jessica, let me know if you're not able to see the screen. All right. So hi again, everyone. My name is Neeraja Ganesan, and I'm a developer advocate with IBM's Digital Business Group. And here's my Twitter handle. So if you want to hear me rant more about cognitive or IoT or anything related, just follow me on that. So thanks for joining. Today, we're going to be doing this little workshop, a 101, a hands-on workshop on basically how to get started using Internet of Things. Use the Bluemix platform. And Bluemix is a cloud platform as a service. So we'll be using that platform along with a simulated device or a simulated sensor, using NodeRED as a tool, and then we'll try to create something using IoT. And once we create it, we'll try to measure that data, because all the data that you have is basically pretty meaningless as long as you give some sort of meaning to it. So let's get started. So if you're able to log into Bluemix after you register for it, you should be able to see a screen like this. And if you have any questions, please paste it in the comments section below of the chat. So this is how your screen is going to look. You're going to see a section that says create apps, something at the bottom that says create a service. And you're going to see how much of space is remaining in your service and your app section. So I have about 80 services remaining, but generally when you join the free tier of Bluemix, you'll probably see about 10 to 20 services, and you'll see about 4 GB to 8 GB. Excuse me. So 4 GB to 8 GB of space that's available. The whole thing runs on Cloud Foundry and is running on the Diego architecture. And you'll also be able to see the number of days that are remaining on the top. And a few other things that you should be able to notice is the region. So the region in which we'll be deploying our apps is US South, simply because that's where we are right now. Or more like we're in the US, so that region will deploy everything the fastest. We also have the Sydney and the UK region. And it also has the facility to let you create multiple spaces. So think of each space as a collection of apps and services that get together to do something. So you want to segregate it in such a way that it makes more meaning to have them all put together or separated together or separated. And you can also give control to somebody else to a certain space within your organization, just to make sure that the remaining apps are shielded away from somebody else's view. And you can be part of multiple accounts. I have a few accounts in my system, and you have multiple organizations. So I have an app that's already running out here. So if you guys are ready, let's get started by creating an IoT Foundation app. So we're going to click on the catalog button that is there to the top. So this catalog button is going to open you to a bunch of applications, a bunch of API services that's basically offered to you as a marketplace from Bluemix. And you can use all of them to be creating your apps as many as your space lets you do. So if we go to the boilerplate section, to the left of the pane under apps, there's something known as boilerplates. So we click on that. And this will open you to a few applications, about 15 to 17 of them. These are all templates that have already been created. So think of it as starting from, like more than a ground zero. So we'll be clicking on Internet of Things Platform Starter. So when you click on that, it'll open to a page where you can create an application for this instance. And you can enter a name for the application as you want. And just make sure that it's unique, because the same way that you cannot have two google.coms, you won't be able to have two of the same app names. So I'm just going to call this Ninja Devices. And out here, you see that the default domain is mybluemix.net. But there are also multiple other domains available. You can add them to it. I've added a few other domains as well. And if you scroll down, you see that this boilerplate comes with 3 services already added to it. One of it is the Node.js runtime. The other is your Cloud database. And the third is your Internet of Things Platform Starter. So as you see out here, these 3 components come together to make an application. And you want your default plan to be selected for both Node.js, for Internet of Things, and for Cloud. There are lots of other options available, but we let everything be default right now. And there's also a pricing plan mentioned at the bottom, but you don't have to worry about it right now, since you're in your 30-day free trial, and you can just click on Create. So clicking on Create right now is basically going to have your application staged, and it's on the process, so the verge of being created. And a few things that you'll notice is that there are a lot of documentations on how to get started with what's an IoT, with NodeRED, and how do you add a simulated device to it. So we'll be doing all of these things, so you can totally read them at your free time. And you see that it says application's been created or updated. But while we're waiting for it to be created, so if we go back to the dashboard page, you see that another application has been added. So this is not running yet because it's still staging. And it also shows you how much of memory is being occupied in that process. And what are the different devices and what are the different services that are being added. We have 2 services. We have the Node 3. the Node.js runtime, you have two cloud and databases, and two of the Internet of Things platform. So while we wait for that one to get created, let me just show you what it's like, what will happen when it automatically would be started. So this is the page that would open when you were to click on the URL. And you'll see this huge button out here that says go to your NodeRED flow editor. You can also note that out here it says learn how to password protect your instance. Right? So clicking on learning how to password protect your instance will basically attach this username and password to the URL. So not everyone's going to have access to it. The other things that you can do is probably make it only read-only. So you can share the URL and people can only see what to do with it as opposed to making changes on it. So we'll start by clicking this one that says go to your NodeRED flow editor. And by default, it should open to a page like this. So I'm going to wait for another few seconds while everybody gets up to speed up to this part. So just to quickly recap what we did right now was in your Bluemix dashboard page. We clicked on catalog, went to the boilerplate, clicked on Internet of Things platform starter, entered your name and click on create. And that is pretty much it. Doing that alone after the application gets started should basically open to a dashboard like this. So the dashboard, when you open it, you already see this flow that's already been created for you. So two different things to the flow, one of it being sending data to the platform, the blue one being the device, and out here you're receiving data from the platform. So if we look to the pane at the left, all these nodes that we have, so each of these rectangular components are known as nodes because they perform some function. We also have comment nodes, which you can add and drag and drop just to add comments, so the flow becomes more self-explanatory. So we have a few input nodes, then output nodes, lots of function nodes being, there are certain function nodes where you can supply some kind of an input, turn it into an HTML and get an output, or supply an input, turn it into a CSV, get it into an output. So each of these nodes has already been defined to do something for you. So you don't have to write the code for it all over yourself, all over again. So it's worth it to spend some time to already study and understand what nodes are available. So you have the range, you have split, that you can join some data together, sequence of messages, XML nodes, a function node, right? Then we have social media nodes, meaning that you can send and receive data both to and from email and Twitter. And the storage node out here, it basically shows you how to send data into your cloud and database or into your MongoDB, or get data from MongoDB, get data from Cloudant, or even from HDFS file system. And below that, we have a lot of Watson nodes being sentiment analysis. Then there's, after IBM acquired Weather Company, we have the Weather Insights node to be able to find out what the weather is like. Then we have a lot of Watson IoT nodes, virtual devices. And in the catalog page, if we go through, beside boilerplates, there are a few other Watson nodes. All of those Watson APIs are available as nodes out here, which means if you were to have seen a conversation API available in the catalog page, you also have a conversation node out here. Or if you saw a text-to-speech API on that page, you have a text-to-speech node out here, meaning you can basically send data as text and receive it as speech. And all of these nodes are pretty useful when you can interconnect them after getting data from the device, or you can send speech data to the device, or after you get data from the device, you can perform some sort of a computation and send some message back to the device. So this is how your default flow is going to look. It'll have all of these nodes. So what we are going to do right now is basically open a new browser tab, open a simulated device. And once you open that simulated device, we'll be getting data from there. And after you get data from there, or the MAC ID, we're going to be plugging that MAC ID out here into this flow, and then we're going to see how to execute it further. So now that we have this workflow for us set up, our next step is to basically open the simulated device. So I'm opening a new browser tab, and this is the URL that I'm entering to basically open a device. So let me just paste it maybe on Google Docs or something so you guys can see it. So it's called ibm.biz/IoT sensor. Easy to remember. So once you copy that and paste it in your browser, let me do it right now by minimizing the screen. It should open to see a device that looks like this, right? So you see a MAC address on top, and it's going to be different for each person. The only thing you remember is when you close the browser right now, you've basically lost the device. So if you want a new device, you need to restart it again, and you'll be getting a new MAC address. Throughout the course of executing this workshop, I would recommend basically not closing your browser at all, because if you do, you're just going to have to copy and paste the MAC address again. So we can let it live in a different part of your browser screen. And you'll see a device that opens up, which basically says 15 degrees temperature. A couple of other things that it does measure is the object temperature and humidity. So you can navigate through all of those three panes by clicking the arrow out here. So you have object temperature, temperature, and humidity. And you can also play around with the values. That is, as you're sending data from this device to the front end, which is NodeRED, let's say if you want to show a fluctuating value, you can increase the arrow out here and basically increase and decrease these values and play around with it. So as and when you increase it, it will send the value that you're currently seeing on the screen. So is everybody good up to this part? All right, so I'm going to assume that you are. Just to recap what I did after we opened IoT Foundation Starter, open a new browser tab and paste this link to open a simulated device. Do not close it, right? All right, so the next thing that we're going to do now is just plug this MAC address into the device. So I'm going to copy this. And we're looking at the flow at the bottom out here. So double click on the blue node that says IBM IoT App in. And there's got to be one tab that says, one text field that says device ID with an example of how it's supposed to look. So just paste it there. Don't worry about the case sensitivity. Let it be exactly the way it is. And you're not putting any spaces or commas in between. And you see that the authentication has automatically been set to quick start. So think of it as a way where you say that you're quickly getting data from a simulated device. So it's just called quick start. Then you have an input type known as device event. And you have a device ID like this. Now, when you bring in your own device, so these devices that you see on IoT Foundation with the simulated one is something that's already been set. So when you bring in your own device, like an Intel Edison or a Raspberry Pi, you basically should be able to add the device ID and make that device ID part of your Foundation instance. So that device ID can also be a quick start. So after we finish this workflow, I'll walk you through what the process is like to add your own device. So you've basically received your device ID. Now name this if you want. So each of these nodes are editable. So I'm going to call it simulated device. Right? Click on done. And okay, so I'm going to put this device basically in the background. I'm not deleting it or closing it. I'm just expanding my screen here. And to the right, there's also a debug pane. So the shortcut for that would basically be either Command and space or a Control and space, depending on whether you're using a Windows or Mac. And it has two tabs out here called Info and the Debug tab. Excuse me. So the Info tab basically shows information on each of these nodes for the ones that you click. So right now, it's showing you information for IBM IoT in node. So if you were to hover around and click any other node, the information will change accordingly. Information will have things like how do you send data to the node, how do you get data from the node, useful things as and when you come across new nodes. And you also have the debug tab. The debug tab basically shows you the output. Think of it as a console window. So after we've pasted the device ID, click on deploy. And remember that for each change that you make, you have to deploy it, else the screen will not record that a change has been made. So this is what you see. So you're automatically getting data from your simulated device. Out here it says 24. And it says temperature 24 is within safe limits. And you're also seeing a JSON data with the topic, the device ID, the device type, etc. So both of these outputs, alternating outputs, are coming from the debug tab. The debug tab being the green tab. So if you click on that CPU status, it says output is message.payload. And then if you were to click on device data, you see the complete message object, the complete message object being this JSON. If you do not want to see it, you can either disconnect it or simply turn off the display. Once you turn off the display, there's a garbage can button on the top right to basically get rid of all of the messages that you saw before. So you've gotten rid of the JSON data display, so now you're only seeing this message. Now let me increase this temperature. Let's say, let me crank it up to 41, right? So, or 44. So now that I've cranked it up to 44, it says temperature 44 is critical. So how did it switch from safe limits to critical, right? The logic flow for that was written out here in between. So you're basically taking data from the device. You're saying message.payload.e.temp. Take that data, pass it through a threshold, and you're basically saying if it's lesser than or equal to 40, you want to follow this path on top. And if it's greater than 40, you want to follow the path at the bottom. So the path at the bottom says temperature is critical, and the path on top says that temperature so-and-so is within safe limits. And both of these outputs are directed to the console, which is the debug tab, and that's how you see it on the screen out here. So this is a great way to basically get data from a simulated device, and if it were an actual device, you would see pretty much the same thing. What are the other things that you can do with this? Right now, earlier, if you remember, I showed you that there was a social media tile where you have the Twitter node and the email node. So the first thing that we're going to do is basically try to get this data and display it on Twitter. So I will drag and drop the node. And what I'm trying to say out here, I'm sure there are better examples of actually sending data to Twitter, but what we're going to do is basically send these two messages that is safe and danger to Twitter and say that, you know, whenever your temperature is safe or dangerous, just tweet it for what it's worth, right? Now, how do you connect it to your Twitter account? So after you drag and drop the node, just double click the node and it says, here's your Twitter ID, right? So what you're doing with your Twitter ID is basically you want to add new Twitter credentials. Click on that pencil icon and it says out here, click here to authenticate with Twitter. So when you click on that, the Twitter account that's already open in the background is the one that it gently picks up. Excuse me. So if you do not want it to pick up the default account, then just log out of that account and then the screen will let you authorize with the new login. So you click on Authorize App, close this window, and then once you return back to the screen, you see that the field is automatically populated to my Twitter handle. So I want to click on add, and there it is. So I'm just saying tweet temperature from simulated device, right? And click on done. And like I said, after every node that you add or delete, it's essential that you press the deploy button on the top right. So I'm going to click on deploy, and I'm going to play around with my temperature a little bit, dropping it to 40, then you want to drop it to 35, right? So now let's open my Twitter account and see if it was actually pasted out here. There it is. So I see 3 Twitter messages which say temperature 35 within safe limits, temperature 40 within safe limits, and temperature 44 being critical. So this is how easy it is to basically authenticate your app to access Twitter and publish data there. So if we switch back to this node right now, since Twitter's got this little condition that you cannot put in duplicate messages, NodeRED also gives you an error that says forbidden message and it says status is duplicate. So for now, I'm just going to delete the Twitter node since we've already seen what to do with it. And I'm redeploying the app without any Twitter credentials in it. So that was fun, right? So it's a good way to let people know that you're in a room that's safe or dangerous. The next thing we're going to do is drag and drop the email node. Now it's also easy to add all of these details and send them via email. Excuse me. Now let's think of a scenario where email would be useful, right? So assume that you're in a manufacturing plant and the manufacturing plant is kind of heating up. So you want the administrator of this plant to basically receive an email as and when the temperature is dangerous. So we can drag the email node out here, connect it up to, let's say, the danger message. And now we're just going to try and send an email. So I'm going to send an email to my email address. And it's automatically connected to the Gmail server, but you can change your server to anything that you want to send your email out of, along with the port number. And I'm going to add my user ID, which is my login credentials. Email to admin. Click on done, and then click on deploy. Right, so now we're trying to send data to email. So if I were to open my email account, all right, let's see what's happening here. All right, so this will get triggered only if the temperature is dangerous, right? Because we've connected only the danger node to it. The temperature 35 is not dangerous, anything above 40 is, so I'm just going to crank it up to, let's say, 45. Now you see it says sending an email. So if I were to go back to my email account and refresh it, there it is. I've received a lot of messages from NodeRED right now, which say that, message from NodeRED, temperature 45 is critical. So I would think this is a good way to let an admin know that, the temperature is going out of control. So you're reducing that lag by basically avoiding to have somebody else contact the admin. The NodeRED flow itself is taking care of it. So just to recap what we did so far, we created basically a NodeRED flow with the Internet of Things Foundation, connected up to a simulated sensor, got data from that sensor, and we've both tweeted it and we've basically sent an email with that same message to it. It's pretty awesome, I think. So what we're going to do next is basically store all of this data, right? So storing this data, now if you remember, we basically already connected to a Cloudant node. So we'll drag and drop the Cloudant node out here, and we'll try to store this data inside a database so it's useful for future reference. And for those of you who just joined or joined a little late, please post your questions in the comment section below, and I'll get to it after we get done with the seminar or this webinar. All right. So we've already played around with the temperature data. What we're going to do now is basically try and put in the humidity data. So first thing we're going to do is format the data the way we want it to. So I'm going to drop down the storage node, drag and drop the Cloudant node, And after you click on Cloudant, look at the Info tab. So the Info tab out here basically says you can insert message.payload, which means the data that's going into this database has to be of the format message.payload, right? So in order to format it the way we want it to be, I'm going to drag and drop a function node. And I'm going to connect this function node to the device. And I'm going to connect that function node on the other end to the database. So we'll open the console of the database and take a look at that. Before that, let's just see how to basically put data here or format it the way we want it to. So what I'm doing right now is basically getting data. I'm taking the timestamp data and the humidity data, and then I'm going to be sending that to the database. So I will leave the screen as it is while I explain what I've done out here. So we're going to be sending both the humidity and the timestamp, right? So I'm basically getting date, hours, minutes, seconds, and formatting them into the way I want it to look. That is from your date object. And I'm going to be getting that formatted time stored in a variable. And I'm creating another variable called message.payload because it clearly said the data needs to be sent as a payload. And I'm placing that out here. And the name of the row or the name of the column, like you think of a database, you need to have both the column name, right? So the column name out here is time. And when you get message.payload.d.humidity, which is coming from this device, you want to store it as humidity. And after you've got both these values, you want to say return message. So I'm going to say get data from get humidity. Let me do one thing. I'll just copy this code and basically paste it in the chat window so it might be easier for y'all to copy it as well. So I've pasted it in the chat window, so hopefully that's visible to you. All right. If not, I'll just paste it later after we're done. So now that we've received the humidity and we've formatted it the way we wanted to, we've connected it to the Cloudant node. And when you click on that node, double click on that node, we basically want to connect it to the Cloudant service. And if you see out here, it says it's automatically populated with the service that's connected to the app, which says service, like Ninja IoT, Cloudant, NoSQL. You can also connect it to a different or an external database by clicking on external. Excuse me. When you click on external, it basically lets you add new Cloudant credentials. And in my case, I already have it connected up through Bluemix, so I'm going to leave it that way. And for database, so if a database does not exist, that is, if a table name does not exist, let's just create one. Let's call this time humidity, right? And we're trying to insert data, so we're going to say insert time humidity. Again, so the database name is something that I made up right now, so all of this data is going to go into that table name. Click on done. And you want to click on deploy. So that is pretty much it. So you're basically getting the timestamp data, you're getting the humidity, and you're inserting it. And let's just go and play around with the humidity to increase the values a little bit. So you see some sort of fluctuation when it goes and sits in the database. Increase it to 81. Let's hope that 83 goes and sits in, 87. And let's drop it down again to, let's say, 73. Right? So what we're going to do now is basically open the database and see if this data is actually sat there. So I'm going back to my Bluemix dashboard and opening the database of the same name, the one that we connected it to. And you want to click on launch. So clicking on launch out here basically opens your database right now. And I'm also going to actually stop sending data now to the database because we seem to have had about 31 rows of data. Or 37. So as you see out here, the name that I entered for creating the database, time humidity, is automatically populated out here and has about 37 documents, right? All right. So launch it again. So if you click on time humidity right now, it opens to show you a bunch of documents that look like this. And how do you see the timestamp and the humidity that's inserted into this? Check the button on top and click on include docs. So when you click on include docs, you basically see time and you see the humidity. And similarly, for each document, you'll see the timestamp and the humidity. So with an increasing timestamp, we have varied values of humidity, right? So we have about 37 documents, that's 37 rows worth of data. So our next step is to basically analyze all of this. So we've completed the task of taking data from a device and storing it into a database along with a timestamp. So in order to analyze it, our next step is to basically create a warehouse out of it and use some sort of an analytics tool in it. So if you look at the Cloud and Database, to the left pane, there's a button that says Analytics. So I'm going to click on Analytics, and it's going to let you create a warehouse. So click on Create a Warehouse. And what you see out here is that for creating a warehouse and for analyzing data, there are two types of databases that are used, both DB and DB2. And we're going to be sticking to DB, which is the first one. And in order to use that, you basically need to log in with your Bluemix credentials again. So these are the credentials that you used while creating a Bluemix account. And click on Authenticate in Bluemix. And after you authenticate with Bluemix, you'll know that because it lets you see the name. You want to enter a name for the warehouse, so I'm going to call the warehouse name also as time humidity. And the data sources being the database which contains all of the documents, right? So if you start with the first few characters, it should autocomplete for you. So I'm choosing the second one, time humidity. And only for autocompletes can you be sure that the database exists. If not, I'd just tell you to watch your spelling, log out, log in, etc. Or try it in a different browser window. And there's an option out here at the bottom that says create a new DB instance. Now, we don't already have pre-existing DB instances because we didn't create it. So let's go with the option that says create new DB instance and click on create warehouse. So creating a warehouse out here is basically going to import data or export data from Cloudant into DB. So after it creates the warehouse, it says warehouse has been provisioned. And you'll see this screen that opens with a link out here that says open in DB. So click on that, and that'll basically open to a new page containing data from DB. So there it is. So there's a quick run-through tour. So you want to click on tables. Again, it tells you how to navigate through tables. Like any other database, it lets you run SQL queries as well. And what you're going to see out here is there's going to be a schema name that's already populated for you. So don't change the schema name. And to its right, there's a drop-down menu that lets you choose the table names. So click that drop-down menu and choose the name of the table which is the same as the table name that you saw in Cloudant. So basically the data has been populated in the same exact table. So if you were to go to browse data, you'll see that your humidity and your time are basically sitting out here, along with lots of other fields, but you definitely have these two as well. Right, so it says 37 rows totally, the way you wanted it. You can browse through them. Now what we're going to do is try to create a chart with this humidity and your timestamp data, given that you have everything in the row column format. And note that all of this data was imported from Cloudant. We did not have to do any sort of manual importing. So DashDB also has a few other options, like you can define a filter to basically restrict the amount of data that's being seen. You can configure columns that you want to include in the view or hide in the view. There's a refresh button out here, which you can use if you have more data coming in. And the second to last button out here is basically the export CSV button. So you want to click on that button and just click on OK and allow the pop-up block. Let me do it again. So there it is. So the CSV file gets downloaded. So what we've seen is how to get data from a device, stored in a database, and download all of that as a CSV. So we can use this CSV for analytics. So if I were to open that CSV right now, it opens as a comma separated value, of course, and I can rename it now. I'll save it on my desktop. Let's say Ninja underscore humidity data. And click on save, right? So if you have Excel as a tool of your choice, and if you were to like double click on the CSV, it should open up as an Excel file, which will automatically let you do everything else you want to do with it. So what I'm going to do now is basically analyze this using Watson Analytics. So I'm opening a new browser tab, and I'm looking for Watson Analytics, IBM. And it'll open to the first page out here, Watson Analytics. Then I'm going to open the product that I have. Where was that? All right, there it is. So this is how your Watson Analytics screen opens to look. So I'm going to click on Add New Data. And adding new data will let me import data in various different formats. So you have data from Box you can get, or Sugar CRM, from SurveyMonkey, Twitter, from the Cognos reports or BI servers, OneDrive, PayPal and Braintree data, Eventbrite. So this tool basically tries to give you various options where you can get data from possible analytics scenarios and then analyze it. So I'm going to import a local file, basically. That's my CSV. So I click on local file, click on browse, and what did I save this data as? You know what? Let me just re-download it. I think I lost it. File, save as in my desktop. So I'll click on browse. All right, I guess it doesn't matter. I have another CSV anyways. So I have a CSV file that I've uploaded. Click on import. And after you import the data, you see that it tries to calculate the quality of the data, how clean it is. So the sample data out here says 75%. So let's see what this data says. Meanwhile, another way to analyze it is basically import it also into an Excel file or a spreadsheet file. So I uploaded the data, I got payload humidity, payload time. I was able to plot a graph with it to show how your data is fluctuating. And with this data, now since there are very few rows of data, it says only 44% quality. The more the sample set you give, the better it is. So when you click on that, what you see is it automatically tries to ask you questions, right? So it automatically tries to understand what the data has. So it says, what is the trend of payload humidity over ID? Or what are the breakdown of payload humidity by payload time? The next question that you can ask is, what is the average of payload humidity, in case you want to try to find out what is the summary of it, right? In case you want to try to find out the average or the total sum. Check this out. So it automatically says that my average is 82.1, even though I don't have to do any kind of math to it. So this is how Watson Analytics works. It automatically tries to guess the kind of relations that you would want to form with the data that you have. Now, if you want to plot a graph of how temperature is changing versus time, what you could do is, what is the breakdown? Let's try to plot a graph with a line chart. And you want to set the X and the Y axis. So I'm going to click on X axis, set it to payload time. Click on Y axis, set it to payload humidity. And there it is. So I've plotted how the humidity is changing versus time. You can play around with a few other things, choose the column names in the bottom, change the color scheme if you want, or change the multiplier scheme. And after you're done with all of this, you can also share it. You can either download this chart as an image or a PDF. So it downloads both of these things for you. Click on download and there it is. New discovery set, and it basically says, this is your chart automatically downloaded. This is your average, right? Very minimal work that you had to do. Now, if we were to go back to a better sample set, that is a sample set that they've already populated, there are lots of other things that it can do, like predict things for you. Like it tries to ask you questions like, what is the trend of cost over a month for a sample set which had all of these columns in it. So this sample set basically had the year to range, the region, city by region, then country. It also tries to plot a world map for you if you choose other questions. So this is one other question that says, what is a predictive model for units sold? I guess what I'm trying to go ahead with this is to say that it can also predict data for you, given that you already have some considerable amount of data to supply it with. And none of these questions are ones that I added at any given point in time. These are questions that automatically come up. So you can break down the profit by region and category, and you see some sort of a map out here to say that, in Asia, Pacific, America, in the Middle East, this is how your breakdown is. So you can keep it or exclude it. So these are the things that you can do with Internet of Things. So once you get the data from a device, you can give it meaning and then try to analyze it. So you have a complete wholesome study of all of the data that you have. You can try to analyze how much your household is consuming electricity, how your company has been doing in terms of sales. You can try to basically connect data from one device to another, right? And it doesn't stop out here. You can also connect it up with a lot of other Watson nodes. as well, like you have language translator, personality insights. One thing that we did last year was basically we tried to perform a ghost hunting hackathon at the Queen Mary, right? So the Queen Mary is a paranormal, a ship which has got a lot of paranormal activity, as history says, and it's based out of Long Beach. So this is what we did. We had multiple, we set up a control room structure. We had multiple rooms where we basically placed a Raspberry Pi, and we connected up to a camera to get devices from there. And after you get data from those cameras, you basically open it up to a screen like this, the control center, try to analyze to see if there's some sort of motion going on. It was a fun little thing that we did, but lots of fun things that you can do with devices. The other thing that I had was I built my own voice search engine.
5 plus 5.
I don't know if you heard that, but I was trying to say 5 plus 5. It gets picked up by the Intel Edison.
5 plus 5 equals 10.
And the answer is given out by the Bluetooth, right, speaker. And the next thing that we did was basically
trying to put them in a hardware world. And so
we had a foosball. We connected it up to
the Bluemix cloud, and we used NodeRED, which is a really great tool for quickly programming. I have to tell you, I came from a back.
So that's basically what we did. We basically take data from a foosball, connected up to NodeRED using a Raspberry Pi, try to find out whether goals are being scored on either sides. So this was an example of what we did. And you can find everything that you created. You can basically go to your Bluemix dashboard, explore and play around with it. And you'll find multiple tutorials online. So let me switch the screen back. So yes, so that's basically been my little webinar on how to do all of these little things. Thank you so much for watching and listening in on this. If you have any other questions, then just tweet about it, ask me questions, and I'll be able to get back to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Neeraja. So I'm looking at the live chat right now, and apparently there are no questions for now. So perhaps we can give like around 15 seconds. If anyone of you have any questions, please post them at the live chat. I was checking on the comment features and it's not there, perhaps because it's live. So I have the live chat on the right side of the screen. So I can see that there are 47 people watching right now. So if any of you have any questions, I'll give you a few moments to post a question on the live chat. So there's one question from Derek. It says, can you please go over adding devices of our own, like Raspberry Pi?
All right. Thanks for the question. So what we're going to do to add devices is basically go to your Internet of Things platform. So click on that platform service, and it should open a page where you should be able to launch it. And after you launch it, I'll show you how to add the device. So I'll probably close all of these links in the background. So if you click on the Manage page, there's a button out here that says Connect Your Devices. It says use our recipes to see how to add your own devices. So click on Launch Dashboard. And when you click on Launch Dashboard, on the pane on the left, there's something known as Devices. So click on that. And out here it says Add a Device. So here's where we'll be creating a device type. And creating a device type, I'm going to call it, let's say, Raspberry Pi. Description, let's say, to get sensor data. Click on Next. So after you get that, you basically should be able to define it into a template You either add the serial number or you should be able to add some sort of a MAC address to it. You want to set the device serial number. I don't have any Raspberry Pi on me right now, but assuming if I were to add some sort of a device serial number, you can also add some sort of a metadata, and that's how your device gets added. Does that answer your question?
While waiting for an answer from Derek, there's also another question. Is Intel Edison module supported as well?
Yes, absolutely. Intel Edison is also supported. So I'm going to look for a link online right now if you're following the screen. So through that, you should be able to navigate to your recipe too. So I'm going to say Intel Edison and IBM Bluemix. So if you type that, the first 1 or 2 links that show up is what is the Intel Edison Watson IoT recipe, right? So click on that. And it's going to open to a tutorial page, which basically shows you a step-by-step guide on how do you connect your Intel Edison or Curie or Arduino all the way up to Bluemix until it shows you that it's connected and registered. So any device, the devices that have been supported so far as I have seen, Raspberry Pi, Photon Plus, we also have the BB8, the Sphero, then the Intel Edison. So yeah.
Also, there are more questions from Derek. Will that, for example, be linked via a Raspberry Pi node in NodeRED? And how would NodeRED pick that up, or the instance pick it up? Any network settings required, etc.
So on NodeRED, as you see, there's a node out here that says simulated device. And out here, you have an input node on the left pane and an output node. So you want to drag and drop the input node and basically change the authentication to Bluemix service where you can add the device ID, or you can change it to an API key, or even if you want to let it remain quick start, you can basically change the device status and application status to add your device ID out here. And the device ID is going to be registered to the IoT Foundation where you added the device. So that's how it's going to get connected once you add the ID. It says chat disabled for this live stream. Do you want to try it with something else, or maybe you go in incognito mode?
Yeah, perhaps you that person has to browser for it to be enabled, because right now I'm using Chrome and it's working just fine. So I think great that it works on Chrome. All right, I think that's all for the questions. Q&A session. Thank you so much, Neeraja, and people that have posted the question on the live chat. Just so you know, the webinar will be posted and uploaded on our YouTube channel, so you can refer to it in the future. And if you have any more questions for Neeraja, here is her Twitter handle. If you can see my slide right here. So if you have any question, you can mention her on Twitter and ask her any question that you might have. And also, just a short announcement, if you're interested in knowing more about webinars and all the same kind of topic, or attend events around your area, you can open events.BeMyApp.com just to get updated about those events. And if you would like to get newsletter from us, from BeMyApp, you can also drop your email address at community.BeMyApp.com. All right, that's all from me. Thank you everyone for joining us on this webinar. See you next time.
Thank you.